All right, hello, good people, and welcome back to Unit 3. Today we'll be talking about media and politics, but this is not really a notes-taking kind of day. This is a day for you to figure out how media impacts politics. So, let me erase this. So for this particular lesson, sorry, let me figure it out. There we go. Took everything else out. So you are going to pick a news story that you want to talk about that you think is a current event that you think is interesting, and I want you to see how the freedom of the press is exercised out and about in society. So for this particular lesson, let's say, for example, you choose, I don't know, climate change, okay? So if you want to do that, go ahead and pick the main idea of the story. Tell me the date that the story was reported, and what biases do you bring to this subject, okay? So if you're like, I know that I'm biased, I know that I am pro anti-global warming efforts. If you know that you are a person who's like, I don't really know that it's the government's job to get involved with global warming, whatever biases you already bring to the subject, it's very important that you know what's called your implicit bias, just like bias or prejudice that you have developed over time. And this is not necessarily to say that you're like a bad person because you have bias. Every single person on the planet has some sort of bias, okay? This is just how we are, because our experiences shape how we see things. And so choosing to see multiple news outlets reporting the same story, it can be very interesting. So for example, like if you're in Greenville and you go to the Bagel Man up there, like on Fire Tower in Arlington, Bagel Man always has Fox News on one TV and CNN on the other, and oftentimes they're talking about the exact same story, but they have very different ways of interpreting it. So we need to talk about how freedom of the press gets exercised. So for this one, I want you to head to allsides.com, okay? You can have that in here. Please use allsides.com to assist. All right, and so if we go to allsides.com, enter. All right, so if we go there, we can choose whatever we want to choose. So if you notice this, this says, the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, said President Trump's condition is improving and that he may be released from the Walter Reed Hospital on Monday, where he's been battling COVID, yada, yada, yada. So here's the thing. CNBC is typically in the center. So remember when we talked about the political spectrum? People can be in the political spectrum on the news as well. All right, so however your newspaper or your website, whoever is reporting this news, whatever outlet you're using, they can bring their own biases as well. So from the center, Trump and the medical team will decide later Monday whether he's discharged, yada, yada. From the left, okay, so on the left side of the political spectrum, prospect of Trump's early hospital discharge mystifies doctors. This looks negative because typically speaking, the Democratic Party does not approve of Donald Trump. And then from the right, Mark Meadows, who is the White House Chief of Staff, says Trump is still improving and is optimistic for a return to the White House. This paints the president in a positive light because this is a Republican-leaning news outlet, which is Newsmax. The Washington Post leans to the left, but notice how it's just one space to the left and not two. And notice how Newsmax is just one space to the right and not two, okay? Where's a good example of one that leans like real far, one or the other? This is a good example also. Supreme Court opens a new term while confirmation hearings are continuing. So this is from the right. Reuters is typically in the middle. Washington Post, again, leans to the left. So it's the same story. It's just interpreted different ways. So what I would like you to do on your copy of The Power of the Freedom of the Press, you can type directly on this document. You can print it out and write on it. I don't really care. It's up to you. Tell me the main idea. Tell me the date it was reported. Tell me about your biases that you bring to the subject. Be real with yourself about your biases, okay? It's okay to have them. It's okay to act on them. You need to be aware of what they are, okay? So what's the headline of the story? Because it might be two completely different ways to spin it. What similarities exist in how they're reported? You're going to have to read through the articles. Okay, I strongly suggest that you go ahead and pop in another column over here and do left, right, and center for all three of them. Okay, so for this particular story, whatever you choose. Okay, are any biases present on the part of the reporter? If so, what are they? What techniques are used in the article to attract and hold the attention of the reader? Is anything omitted or left out from the story? So I want you to see how the freedom of the press is used in order to inform people, but also used in order to persuade people to think one way or the other. All right, so that is our lesson on media and politics. It's really just an activity for you to kind of dig in and see how our power of the press is used.